Imagine a world where generosity, collaboration, and caring are the norm. A world that's within your reach. I'm Gale West, and this is Reality Reimagined, where we break boundaries, elevate your spirit, and turn your world into something extraordinary. As the best-selling author of Money Come Dance With Me and your guide on this incredible journey, I'm here to challenge the ordinary and introduce you to the extraordinary. We stand at the edge of one of the most thrilling evolutionary leaps in human history, from unraveling ancient mysteries to diving into cutting-edge science, spirituality, and the emerging economies. This is your front row seat to the future. Together with visionaries from around the globe, we'll explore who are we and who are we becoming, and how can we reshape reality? Reality Reimagined begins now. Get ready to transform. I'm Gale West. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm your host, and I'm so happy to have John Perkins as my guest today. And John Perkins is an economist, author, and activist. As a major international consultant and chief economist, John was advisor to the World Bank, UN, Fortune 500 corporations, US, and other governments. His many books, including Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which spent more than 70 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, are published in 33 languages and have sold more than 2 million copies. That's a lot. He has lectured at more than 50 universities and been featured on ABC, NBC, CNN, Time, the New York Times, Elle, Der Spiegel, and others. John learned about the power of using perceived reality to change objective reality from Amazonian shamans in 1968 to 1971, and later from teachers around the world. He has used this knowledge to help individuals, corporations, universities, and governments. He is a founder of the nonprofits Dream Changer and the Pachamama Alliance. He has received many awards, including the John Lennon and Yoko Ono Peace Prize. Welcome, welcome, John. So happy to have you.
Thank you, Gale. Great to be here with you.
So this is Reality Reimagined. And what is your vision, your new vision for reimagining reality?
Well, I think, what's interesting about all this is we know that perception molds reality. Basically, perception, when we change perceptions, we change our actions. When we change our actions, we change reality. And what human beings have been operating under for a blink of the eye, historically speaking, is the perception that we are apart from nature, superior over nature. We have the right to do whatever we want, to exploit nature. That's a perception, and it's created a reality that's led to climate change, income inequality, resource depletion, environmental destruction, over and over. It's the things that what we call the death economy, an economic system that's basically consuming and polluting itself toward self-destruction. But that's all based on a perception of maximizing short-term profits, regardless of the social and environmental costs, maximizing, short-term materialistic consumption. And we need to change that perception. So my hope and my view of the new reality is that we see ourselves as a part of, not apart from nature, which is how human beings have seen ourselves for most of the 200,000+ years that we've considered ourselves to be Homo sapiens. So it's not a new concept. It's an old concept, but it's been replaced in recent history by this idea that we are superior over human supremacy. Very, very dangerous idea.
Yeah, right. Well, the next question usually is what brings you hope, but you kind of answered that. But do you want to add anything to it? Like you travel around the world, John, and I know that you see many people, not just here in America, which, I'm here in Los Gatos, California. Where are you? You're up in Olympia Falls, or where are you now, John?
Well, I live on an island near Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the West Coast, but you travel all over the world and you see people and know that you're kind of on the cutting edge of where people are at. What do you see as changes that are happening in the world?
I think there's a consciousness revolution where people around the world, everywhere, and, whether I'm speaking in China or Russia or Latin America or Europe, um, that people are really becoming conscious of this fact that we have created a situation that we can't continue. This
Mhm.
idea that we're apart from nature and can exploit nature. So I get hope from the knowledge that people all over are becoming conscious of this. And at the same time, there's blowback. There are those that the status quo that wants to stop this consciousness change. And historically speaking, that's always been true when there have been revolutions, if you want to call it that, when there have been major changes in how we perceive the world and therefore of our reality. There's always those, the status quo that pushes back. And, real agents of change take energy from the pushback. Like a good martial artist, I've been a martial artist most of my life. Martial artists know that if you're up against a guy who's stronger and bigger than you don't try to overpower him. You use his energy against him. And agents of change have always seen the blowback, the status quo trying to stop them as giving them energy to move forward.
That's an interesting concept to think about because I was talking to somebody yesterday who was going, "Oh my God, computers are really they're evil. They're taking over the world." Blah blah. I said, your thoughts are creating that reality, and they could be used for good, possibly. So you could use that energy as a pushback. That yeah, that's really that's really a powerful thing. It's all energy. It's all energy, whether you use it for good or bad.
It is. Our emotions are all energy.
Yep.
Some people
Yep.
say, well, I don't want to feel sad or angry or jealous. And I like to tell them, well, if you're sad or angry or jealous, you're sad or angry or jealous. Don't deny it.
Yeah.
I wrote a book called Touching the Jaguar. I'm wearing this
I
jacket.
love it. So those of you who are on the podcast, he's showing his T-shirt, which is this gorgeous jaguar. Hello, this multicolored jaguar, and when he moves, is the mouth of the jaguar moves.
Yeah. And that whole concept, which comes out of an Amazonian shaman who saved my life many, many years ago, is that um, if we run from that which holds us back, our blockages, our jaguars, the things that stand in our trail of advancement, if we run from them, they chase us. If we're in denial that, oh, I'm not good enough to write a book, I'm not old enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not the right gender, I'm not the right height, I'm whatever the heck it is, if we run from that and continue to be in denial, we're stopped. But if we reach out and touch it, it gives us the energy to change our perceptions. And again, when we change perceptions, we change our actions, and that changes reality. So, we're at this time in history when we are confronting, we're understanding that the jaguar on our path is this idea of maximizing materialism and for corporations short-term profits and being apart from nature. So this is the time when we touch that and we take energy from it as you would from anything that's trying to stop you. And again, this force is lined up trying to stop us. The status quo saying, no, 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 if everything's perfect the way it is. But when you reach out and you touch those forces and you take energy from them
Mhm.
and turn it around. And we're seeing this happening, Gale, all over the world. We're seeing it's in so many places. We've got President Xi in China. We've got Putin in Russia. We have what's going on in the United States. It's incredible divisiveness in our political campaigns. And in all those cases, we see forces coming forward that are trying to stop us from progressing to being truly conscious human beings that are acting consciously to make a better world for future generations of all species. And it's important that we truly see that and touch that force and take energy from it.
Yeah. So I entitled this segment with you, The World is as You Dream It, which you wrote that book. That's the title of your book that you wrote in 1994, 30 years ago. It's amazing. And it
Wow.
still feels relevant today. So, can you tell us what was the inspiration for that book? And you have the story that you have about you just kind of skim past that story of the shaman that saved your life. And I know you're an amazing storyteller. Can you tell us about the inspiration from that book? And what do you mean by the world is as you dream it? And how did you get that inspiration? And like, and your story about the shaman who saved your life?
Well, those are really two
Two
different
different things.
two different stories. And so the life saving when I was in the Peace Corps in 1968 to 1971 in Ecuador, deep in the Amazon rainforest most of that time. And at one point, I got very, very sick. I wasn't able to keep any food down. I lost a tremendous amount of weight in a very short period of time. I was deep, deep in the Amazon, so I don't know how much weight I lost. There were no scales, but I couldn't stand up. I was lying flat on the floor in a sleeping bag in a hut or in the Amazon and resigned to dying because I'm a long, long way hiking through very difficult jungle and then taking rickety old buses up to the nearest medical facility. 3 days of impossible travel for someone in my condition. And a shaman then offered to save my life. And he was brought to me by the school teacher who I knew. And this was a Achuar shaman. And, this guy comes up to me. I'm lying on the floor. And I'm looking up at this guy. He looked huge. As it turns out, he was really quite tiny. I find out later. But he was fierce looking. He wasn't wearing much, with loincloth and covered with tattoos and very fierce looking. And the school teacher tells me, he says, "This is our shaman." And, this is 1969, Gale. I had no idea what a shaman was. I'd graduated from business school. I was a shaman. And he
And
says,
tattoos and a loincloth, no less.
yeah, exactly. Well, he says, "This guy can heal you," and I didn't have much. It was the only option. So later that night, I'm carried to the shaman's house, and he comes in and it's dark. It's very dark. There's just a few embers and a fire in the middle of the lodge, and they put me on this bench. And he comes in now. He looks even more fierce because, in addition to his tattoos, he's got all these. The tattoos are black, but he's now got all these red lines, also all these things all over him. And he sits down in front of me and he gives me something to drink, and he starts chanting, and I go into this deep, deep altered state. And in this, and I have my eyes closed, and I'm just seeing all these strange amorphous forms in front of me. And the shaman says, "Touch the jaguar." Well, Gale, I'm in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of the night. It's dark, and I know there's jaguars out there. I've heard them. I've seen their tracks. I open my eyes. I look all around, like, "Where's the jaguar? Like, help me! What do you mean, touch the jaguar?" And then the shaman says, "No, no, 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 no. Close your eyes and see the jaguar, the image, and touch it." And I do, and these amorphous forms transform into a jaguar's face, like the one you described that I'm wearing on my T-shirt.
Right.
And at that time, I hear my mother saying, "Son, the food and drink will kill you." And I realized, like the people that I was living with in the Amazon don't drink river water. They know the rivers that have organic matter in them, dead animals, dead trees. They can't drink the water. The women make a kind of beer called chicha by chewing manioc root and spitting it. And that sets up a fermentation process that you get something you could call a kind of beer. Then you can mix water with it. I'm drinking a lot of this stuff because you got to rehydrate in the Amazon, and there wasn't any Perrier, there wasn't anything else. And some of the foods, like, a favorite of squirming white grubs that you pull out of a rotting log down the hatch. And I
You
mean,
you ate
wow.
those?
Oh, yeah, still
Oh
do.
my
Wow, they're a delicacy.
God. Still squirming?
Yeah, they can
Oh
be.
God. Oh God.
They also now when we have, yeah, I think you might have eaten some.
I did in China. I had worms, but they were dead.
well, sometimes they also cook them. But um, so I'm eating a lot of very strange foods. And I'm realizing that every time I do this, I drink this chicha, I just spit beer, I hear a voice that sounds like my mother saying, "It'll kill you." And at the same time, I see how vibrant, robust the Achuar are, the people I'm living with. The men carry wild boars that they've killed in the forest that weigh several hundred pounds out of the forest on their backs. Their legs would make Olympic soccer players jealous. They're very robust, and people live to be very old if they don't die at childbirth or in a hunting accident or some such thing. And so that night on this shamanic journey, I realized that it's not the food and drink that's killing me. It's my perception of the food and drink.
Wow. 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 That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And after that, the shaman, and so over the next couple of days, I recovered. And the shaman then requested as payment that I become his apprentice. And of course, I had no desire to be a shaman's apprentice. I didn't know what a shaman was. There was no future in shamanism in those days. I graduated from business school, but he saved my life. So the next year or so, I spent studying with him. And one of the first things he taught me was touch the jaguar. When there's something blocking you, when you have a perception that's causing you problems or keeping you from doing something or being the way you want to be, you got to go up to it and touch it and see where it came from. So my jaguar was this voice that's telling me that the food and drink is killing me. And it was an incredible teaching. And, since then, Gale, I've understood that psychotherapy is based on altering perceptions to change reality. So is marketing. So is politics. Everything. There's no United States except as after people perceived one.
Yep. Right. 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 That's
And then
true.
took the actions to make it happen. So powerful.
Everything is what we agreed to.
Yeah, yeah. So you reach the perception, and then you take the actions, which in terms of creating the United States means you've got to codify laws and have a
Right.
general agreement as to what that means. The first step is you've got to perceive the possibility that you can be free of Europe and of England in that particular case. But throughout life, all of everything we do is based on perception. Almost everything we do is based on perception. You know.
So, what, if we look at the idea of the world is as you dream it, that kind of segues into your story. We're
Mm-hmm.
about 3 minutes to the break. Can you just, because I want to come back to this idea of perception. What is the insight you have to people who are listening to that around touching their jaguars? What ideas do you have for people to do that? Because a lot of people have a lot of fear, but they just get frozen.
Well, there's 5 questions I have people ask themselves, and if we've only got a couple of minutes, we should probably delay that until after the break. Uh,
Okay.
we can go into that. But I think the important thing here is to understand how powerful our perceptions are with everything we do as individuals and what we do collectively. And this idea that the world is as you dream it, that came out of another experience I had with a shaman in the Amazon a number of years later when I went back and stopped being an economic hitman. So after I got out of the Peace Corps, I became a chief economist at a big consulting firm. And I was really an economic hitman. I did that for 10 years. But after I saw the light of what I was really doing, and again, it was about perception. Uh, I went back to the Amazon and said, I want to help you guys save your forests. And they said, if you want to do that, what you've got to do is change the dream of your people. It's your people who are destroying the forest. It's your oil companies. It's your mining companies. It's your cattle ranches. And basically, it's your perception of what it means to be humans in your idea of being apart from nature and exploiting it. So if you want to save these rainforests and the planet as we know it, the planet as we know it, change the dream of your people.
Say that again. That's really profound.
Yeah, if you want to change the way that we're conducting ourselves on this planet, that creating this death economy, you've got to change the dream of your people. It isn't the oil companies that are destroying it. It isn't the mining companies. It's the dream of the people who demand oil and the minerals that come from mines. It's the dream of the world, of the modern world, of the industrial world, that the dream that we need those things, that we must keep devastating nature in order to satisfy our materialistic greed.
We're going to take a break. And when we come back, I want to talk about this idea that people often have, which is, I'm just one person. What can I do? You know, as opposed to the whole wide world. And so I really say that our dream, where our thoughts are we are more powerful than we realize, and collectively we are more powerful than we realize. But oftentimes we think that is each individual, we don't have any power. So I'd like to go a little bit more deeply into that, and I'm sure you have lots of things to say, John, about that. And we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I'll have John Perkins, my guest, who's this amazing storyteller. I recommend you read his books. He has many, many, many of them. And we'll be back in a flash. Tune into Reality Reimagined on Transformation Talk Radio to expand your mind, elevate your spirit, and transform your world into something truly awesome. Reality Reimagined is an exciting out-of-the-box adventure into what's new, what's old, and what's emerging. We are on the precipice of one of the most exciting evolutionary shifts in human history. Together with global thought leaders, we will explore who are we and who are we becoming. For more information, visit successwithsoul.com.
Imagine if you were truly flourishing, how would your financial expansion impact the world? Author of Money Come Dance With Me, Gale West is an internationally known speaker, creative catalyst, and business intuitive at Success with Soul. Work with Gale to create a new relationship with money as your friend. Link the soul of your business to the business of your soul with programs like Sacred Money Mastery, Akashic Records of the Soul, and more. To receive a healing money meditation, go to successwithsoul.com today. And this is Gale West, and we are back, and I have my guest, John Perkins, and we've been talking about lots of different things, touching the jaguar, his journeys into the Amazon, and how he became a shaman. And we've been talking also about perception, and that we need to change the perception of the Western world. So one of the things I was saying before the break, John, was that so many people think, well, I'm just one person. What does my perception have to do with the whole collective?
Yeah. Well, Rosa Parks was just one person, and Mother Teresa was just one person, and Gandhi was just one person, and George Washington was just one person, and all of those one persons had a huge impact, but they didn't know when they began that they were going to have such an impact. But the only reason they could have an impact was because all these other one persons, also bought into the perceptions that these people were voicing. So both things are important. Some people voice the perception change, and other people listen to it and act upon it. And I think it's so important that we all understand that we have the ability, each one of us as individuals, to participate in this incredible movement of consciousness change. It's not just that we have the ability, we can also have great fun in doing it. I talked earlier about emotions are just energy. And I sometimes like to think about how angry I am. And I've been angry a lot of my life. I was angry about the Vietnam War. I was angry about a lot of things that corporations have done and what we're doing to the world. And I used to express that anger in ways that were quite destructive and self-destructive. I got run over by horses and policemen on horses in Boston Common and so on. Well, I'm still very angry, but I'm having a lot of fun with it now. I'm talking to you. I'm writing books. I'm traveling around the world speaking. I'm really enjoying it, but it's driven by that same emotion. So when we have these emotions, how do we perceive what they will do to us, how they will drive us forward to take actions that we can really enjoy and that will be effective for us personally and maybe for others too. And as I mentioned earlier, I suggest to people that they answer 5 questions, which I don't know whether you want to go
Yeah,
into
let's
that.
do it. So we're talking about, he wrote a book called Touching the Jaguar. And in that book, he asks people to ask there's 5 questions, right? So go ahead.
Yeah.
So every book is really good. So I recommend, and there's a lot of them. So
Yeah.
anyway, Touching the Jaguar.
In the third book of the trilogy, that Confessions of an Economic Hitman, the third one that came out a couple of years after Touching the Jaguar, just a little more than a year ago, I go into it also. So both of those. Anyway, the first question is, what do I most want to do for the rest of my life? What will bring me the greatest satisfaction, the greatest bliss, the greatest joy? Because if we don't do that, we're never going to be successful. We might make a lot of money. I made a lot of money as an economic hitman, chief economist, but it wasn't bringing me joy. Now I don't make nearly as much money, but I'm having a lot more fun. So I would answer that question myself by saying, I want to write. I love to write. I love to write. It's my pleasure as well as my job. And I have a friend who's kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum. He's a carpenter, and he says, I want to work with my hands in wood. So the second question is, uh, how can I do this in a way that helps transform this failed degenerative death economy into a vibrant, regenerative life economy, an economy that pays people to clean up pollution and regenerate destroyed environments and create new technologies that go way beyond our solar and wind of today, and keep going that don't ravage the earth, that see us as a part of nature, not apart from nature. So my answer to that would be, I'll write books that inspire people to take that route of transformation from the death to the life economy. And my carpenter friend would say, well, I'm only going to build things with sustainable materials. And I'm going to replant a tree for every tree that the wood I use cuts down. So the third question then is, what's stopping me from doing these two things? Mm-hmm. And I might say as a writer, well, I know to be successful as a writer, I have to write for at least 2 hours a day. I don't have time. And my carpenter friend might say, well, my clients don't want to pay the extra price for sustainable materials or to get me to replant trees. So that's the jaguar. What's stopping us? What's standing in our path? That's the third question. The fourth question is, when I touch that jaguar, how does it change my perception? As a writer, I might say, well, I can turn off the television for 2 hours every night and write, or get up a little earlier in the morning and write. I can find those 2 hours or whatever. Maybe it's only an hour, and maybe I only need an hour, but I bring into my perception that I can create the time to do this. And my carpenter friend would say, well, I'm going to tell my clients that if they're paying an extra price, it's not a cost. It's an investment in the future for them and their families, future generations. And the fifth question then is, okay, what actions do I take? Well, as a writer, I got to start writing. As a carpenter, he's got to build this cabinets like this with sustainable materials and tell everybody that he's doing that. Tell his clients that they're investing in the future. So those 5 questions. What do I most want to do for the rest of my life? How do I do this in a way that transforms the death economy to a life economy? What's stopping me? What happens when I touch that thing that's stopping me, when I admit to it and delve into it? And what actions do I take?
That's really powerful. Now I'm thinking about how that's kind of a life, but there's little actions that you can take also every day. So I remember watching a movie about this guy who went and photographed people who were pickers in this huge it's the largest landfill in the world, and they basically pick different recyclable materials. And this one guy said, I don't understand why people put their plastic bottles here. And they go, well, what's one bottle? But he says 99 doesn't equal 100.
Mm.
And so every little time that you say, oh, it's not convenient, it's not this, it's not that, and it doesn't matter, that it does matter.
Yes,
And thinking about 99 does not equal 100.
true. Yes. I like,
Yes.
that's a great story. Yeah, and we all know there's, a lot of actions we can take every day that will help change things. That's an example that recycling and the various, we all know drive less, use less petroleum, eat less meat, so on and so forth. Uh, yeah, so those are all things that I think go without saying. And then in addition to that, what do we most want to really do for the rest of our life beyond
Well,
that?
yeah. What impact do you want to have? What's your legacy that you want to leave? And
Yeah.
you want is your and really and I believe too, John, that the more that we focus on what's not working, as opposed to what can I do that is working, that's going to support the vision that I have for the world, that's where our points of power are.
Exactly.
And when you think about, oh, this is bad and the world is going to hell in a handbasket, I said, wait a minute. It's better than it was a long, long time ago. People have more women are educated, more people have access to health and water than ever before in the world. And what's your greatest vision for the world? And what are you going to bring? How are you going to make it happen? What is the little way that you're going to make it happen? Hold that vision.
Yes. And when I
And
talk about the death economy, I think we also have to recognize that that economic system has created miracles, incredible medicine, science, technology, art, our ability to do this program comes out of that. So it certainly isn't all bad by any means, and I don't mean to imply that, but it's time now. It's reached the limit where we've gone overboard with this idea of maximizing short-term profits, regardless of the social and environmental costs, and short-term materialistic consumption. It accomplished a lot, but now it's time to change that perception. And it doesn't mean the past perceptions were wrong. It just means it's time to change.
so let's go back to the idea of the dream, which we talked about. The dream, what is the dream? I mean, you're talking about the death economy, but how do we and collectively changing our dreams? But really, like I think so many people are unconscious, living an unconscious dream, and a lot of people don't realize like there are people around the world that are taking action. There are things that are changing, and so going back into the world is as you dream it. What is your we talked about how it's relevant. It was relevant back in 1994 and it's still relevant today.
And I think if everybody looked at their lives, all the people listening to this, you could see that there have been times in your life when you said, "This is what I really want to do." And somebody else has said, "Well, you can't do that. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough, whatever." But you went ahead and you did it. And because you had that dream and you gave the dream energy and it manifested. And you might also remember there have been times in your life when maybe you didn't move forward with it and later wished you had. And I think we can all look at those times. We've all been through them. I have, certainly. But the fact of the matter is that when we dream something and we're not talking just about it might be a nighttime dream, but we're not just talking about a nighttime dream. We're talking about a vision. Like, I wanted to get this book that became Confessions of an Economic Hitman published. I'd already published 5 books on shamanism, but this was a whole new genre and a very, very controversial one. And I knew it would be. The book was rejected by 39 publishers. I get 39 rejection slips.
Oh my
But yeah, so how do you dream what those rejection slips mean? Well, I taught myself, well, here's another rejection slip. Well, this editor who's rejecting this probably had a fight with his wife at breakfast. He's just in a bad mood, so he threw everything into the rejection pile. Or this editor, she probably had a headache when she came to work, and she just threw everything into the rejection slip. Or this
They made
editor,
up stories.
oh well, yeah, I created stories that may or may not have been true.
Oh, true.
What I,
Okay. I
what
love
I what I'd learned is that editors are just human beings. I knew from previous experience that they can make a lot of mistakes, and they do, and they did. And so, finally an editor at a publishing house on the 40th one published the book, and within a couple of weeks it had reached the New York Times bestseller list and stayed there for almost a year and a half. And so, by I think having that dream, the world is as you dream. I was dreaming that book into existence. I'd written it. Here it is. Here's this manuscript. Everybody's rejecting it, but I continue with the dream, and the dream manifested in a big way. And I think that's a bit of a telling story. But I think we can all relate to certain times when we've had a dream of something that we manifest. And this can be at a very simple level, like it's going to be a pretty hot day here where I live now, and I'm dreaming that later this afternoon I'm going to go out and have an ice cream cone. But that won't happen unless I give energy to the dream, which I intend to do. So once we have the dream, then we give it energy and we take the actions that make it happen. Oh, I want an ice cream cone. Well, there's a place down the street here where I can get one, but I got to get off my chair and go out there and make it happen. So that's a
So
simple way.
I love that saying, dream it into existence.
Yeah.
So you had amazing experiences with shamans. And do you want to share some of the insights that you received from shamans and how one dreams something into existence? Because that's really important. Somebody says, "Well, I have hopes and dreams," and they're just dreams out there.
Yeah. Well, you've also had that, Gale.
Yeah.
Maybe you should share one of them. You want to share one? I'd like to hear one
Well,
of
it's interesting because I was asked to go and open the Akashic records of the Bosnian pyramids. So I went to the Pyramid of the Dragons, which is I got the idea that that is where our energies of as a human race have been low. So I opened up the Akashic records and I said, what has kept the energy of the human race low? And what I heard is the ache in the heart. I thought it was like war and suffering and blah 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 blah. What I heard was the ache in the heart of the dreams that were never fulfilled.
There you
And
go.
the stories that were never written, the songs that were never sang,
Hmm.
the symphonies that were never composed.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I'm like, whoa, that's really profound.
Yeah.
The ache in the heart of the dreams that were never fulfilled. And there are so many people who have an ache in the heart.
And
And
what have you done with that dream?
my dream.
Yeah, well, you've created this podcast, among other things, written about it, and written a book, and so that's part of the story too. And you dream this podcast, and you dream the book before you could write it. You can't write a book until you dream it. You can't even write the first sentence until you dream it.
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting because I kept thinking, I wrote it for those of you who are just listening. My book is called Money Come Dance with Me. And I started talking to the consciousness of money like maybe 15 years ago. And I kept thinking my thing is not money. My I'm not the money because people go, "Oh, you're the money woman." I'm like, "No." But one of the things I realize is one of the dreams I have is how do we heal the trauma in the collective?
Hmm.
That's a passion I have. How do we heal the trauma in the collective? And money is one of the biggest sources of trauma. And if we shifted our paradigm, you're talking about dreaming, our paradigm around money is it's bad, it's evil, it's used for bad, and blah blah blah. The death economy that you're talking about. But if we really looked at it as something that we have created, it is incredibly that has incredible potential to bring people together, cultures together, and that when we use it for good and we hold that energy, that the people who are spiritual hold an energy that this is good, and how can I use it for good? How can I use it as a source of collaboration and generosity? They will change the paradigm.
Yeah.
And that was my dream. That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah. And you dreamed a podcast.
That was a dream I had in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have a podcast if you hadn't first.
If I hadn't had a dream, and the podcast was I had met Jonathan Salk, and I read his book, A New Reality, and I'd met you, and these are the two people I'd wanted to have on my radio show if I ever had one. There you go, John.
Yeah. So you dreamed me onto this show.
I did dream you onto the show. Yes.
Thank you. I'm glad I've been in your dreams.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a dream. I remember years ago this is the 80s. I was working for the city of Des Plaines as a community social services coordinator. And this one of these the people there said, "Hey, what do you want to really be?" I said, "I want to be a shaman." He looked at me and had no idea what a shaman was. And I thought, "Oh, I can't be a shaman." But I've traveled with you to Ecuador, to Colombia, and to the Guatemala to meet with shamans. And in some ways, the work that I do is changing perception a lot.
Yeah, that's
in my coaching, in my thinking, having people rethink their idea of money, rethinking who they are. Yeah.
So when we come back from the break, I'd like to tell a story about how dreaming fits in with the scientific community, modern science. It plays a huge role.
That sounds great. I'm looking for it. Okay, John. And we are going to be back in a few minutes or moments or whatever. And I have John Perkins as my guest, and I'm Gale West. And stay tuned. We'll be back in a flash. Tune into Reality Reimagined on Transformation Talk Radio to expand your mind, elevate your spirit, and transform your world into something truly awesome. Reality Reimagined is an exciting, out-of-the-box adventure into what's new, what's old, and what's emerging. We are on the precipice of one of the most exciting evolutionary shifts in human history. Together with global thought leaders, we will explore who are we and who are we becoming. For more information, visit successwithsoul.com.
Imagine if you were truly flourishing, how would your financial expansion impact the world? Author of Money Come Dance With Me, Gale West is an internationally known speaker, creative catalyst, and business intuitive at Success with Soul. Work with Gale to create a new relationship with money as your friend. Link the soul of your business to the business of your soul with programs like Sacred Money Mastery, Akashic Records of the Soul, and more. To receive a healing money meditation, go to successwithsoul.com today. And we are back, and this is Gale West, your host of Reality Reimagined, and I have John Perkins as my guest. We've been talking about so many interesting things like dreams and perceptions and touching the jaguar and shamanism and the death economy and the new economy. And so when we took a break, John was talking about what was it? That it was science.
How dreaming and science unite.
Oh, how dreaming and science unite.
Okay.
Take it away, John.
All right. So this is just one of many stories, but many years ago, I took my daughter, when she was quite young, to the Tom Edison Museum in Florida, in Fort Myers, Florida. So he had two laboratories, one in New Jersey and one in Florida. And we go through this laboratory of Edison's, and it had all these test tubes and glass pipes and all kinds of things that you'd expect in a laboratory of a scientist. And then the guide who's taking us through there says, and now I want to take you to the most important room in this laboratory. And we go outside and we go down this corridor and he goes to this door and he opens this door and it's a little tiny room with a cot in it, like a broom closet with a cot in it. And he said, Edison said this is where he got all his ideas. Every day he came in here and he took a nap for 20 to 30 minutes.
Oh my God.
And I'm like thinking, he wasn't napping. He was going into an altered reality. He was dreaming. Yes, he was dreaming and napping and dreaming. I take naps as frequently as I can in the afternoon when I'm writing, working on a book, and that's where a lot of ideas come to when I'm sort of in this half state. And then I went back and did some research on Edison, and Edison at one point said, I didn't create the light bulb. The whole idea was always out there. I just went into this altered state and saw the whole idea come together. A light bulb is a possibility, electricity. But then I had to go back into the laboratory and take these actions of experimenting with, I think he said, about 1,000 filaments in a vacuum tube before I found one that finally worked in the light bulb. So he had the dream of the light bulb, and he knew the dream could manifest, but now he had to actually take the actions to make that happen, which in his case meant going back into that other laboratory and making a vacuum tube and trying out different filaments in it until they got one that worked.
Well, if you think about that in non-local reality, there is no time and space. It's already been created.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just checking it out and looking at it and seeing that it's there, it's possible, and he's downloading it.
Yeah, yeah. And it reminds me of the story, which you've probably heard from me before, Gale, but maybe others haven't. And many years ago, I was deep in the Amazon in an indigenous lodge, Achuar lodge, and about a dozen people living there, and I was living with them for a while. But early on, I had this transistor radio, and everybody gets up very early in the morning, before it's light, actually. And we get up, and I have this idea, I get this transistor radio, and I put it in the middle of the lodge. And I know up in the Andes, there's this radio station called El Voz de los Andes, the voice of the Andes. It's an evangelical radio station, but it plays some amazing music early in the morning. These panpipes, the drums, and the flutes, and Quechua, indigenous Andean music. And so I turn this radio on to get in this music, and the music blasts out, and all the people in that lodge run out and hide in the forest. and I sit there in front of the radio. And after a while, the head of the family, a man, a shaman, who's known as a great warrior and hunter, he comes in, he's carrying a spear, and he comes skulking in, and I can tell he's a little embarrassed because he ran and hid in the forest. And I've been sitting there in front of this radio that's playing this amazing music. But he comes in and he hits the radio with his spear, and it keeps playing. And then he hits it a little harder, knocks it over, and it keeps playing. So finally, he just sits down next to me with the spear across his crossed legs. And we sit there for a long time, just listening to this music. And finally, he leans over to me and he says, "Okay, tell me, how did you get all those men and their instruments in that little tiny box?"
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's his only reality. If there's music, somebody's got to be in there making it.
Right, right.
And I tell him, well, there's this tower up there and high up in the Andes Mountains, and it's sending these energy waves down here, and this little radio can pick up those energy waves, and then you can hear them. And he kind of looks at me like maybe I'm crazy. But anyway, he calls everybody else in and says, "Okay, it's safe in here. Come on in." We listen to music. And a few days later, he comes back to me and he says, "I've been thinking about that little box of yours. And it's just like us shamans." He says, "We know all the information we ever need is out there, floating around. All we got to do is reach up and grab it," which is what your radio did with that music. And that was so profound, and that's exactly what Edison was talking about. Like the light bulb idea was out there. He just had to grab it.
Yeah.
And you think about the word inspiration. I know when I do my best writing, I don't think about it. I just let it come. That's why it often can come to me during naps, at some details or whatever. That's inspiration, being in spirit. imagination, I the magus, I the magician. These are potent words because they express something very real, which is the information's all out there. Right now in this room that I'm surrounded by the Beatles, Lady Gaga, Shakespeare, they're all right here. All you got to do is reach
Oh,
up and
right.
grab them.
He's showing his cell phone.
Oh yeah, sorry, myself. Reach up and grab them. And there they everything that's ever been
I'm
written.
going, what, the Beatles? Are you a Beatles outside your house?
The music of
The Beatles
yeah.
infestation.
I mean, we're surrounded by all these incredible thoughts and music and information. All we got to do is grab it. And we've now invented this technology which makes it possible to grab that which has already been thought, that which has already been done. But there's a lot of stuff out there that hasn't been done or thought yet. And we
Mm-hmm.
can grab that too. And that's what inspiration is. And that's what creativity is. And that's what imagination is. And that's the dream. And we reach out and we grab this dream. And then we have to figure out what actions we must take to manifest the dream, as Edison had to do with testing different filaments in a vacuum tube.
And realizing that we're not alone. A
Yeah,
lot of stuff, it's like um, he had help. He had a lab assistant, he had help with him. But when we think that we have to, the whole myth of the pulling yourself up by the bootstraps is crazy. No one does anything alone.
right.
We're in community. And I think that's a really important thing that we don't recognize, especially in the Western world and here in the States, that community is really essential to make something happen.
Yeah, yeah. Look at
And
Shakespeare.
synchronicity.
Look at Shakespeare. Now, Shakespeare, with all his plays, most of his plays draw on past stories that he heard in Venice or Denmark or wherever. But he also had all these actors around him, and apparently, they created the plays together. Shakespeare wrote them down, and so, he was undoubtedly a creative person, but it was a joint effort. It was a huge team
Mhm.
endeavor. And I think you could say that about everything, like you said. Yes, we're not alone.
Yep. No, no, no. And thinking about, I remember the rabbi, the Kabbalistic rabbi we used to study with. He was specialized in healing, and he said the solution to a problem is already there before the problem occurred.
Mm. Hmm. Nice. Very nice.
And so thinking about that we have this problem that we want to solve, we're in this death economy, but the solution is already there
Yeah.
before we even had that death economy.
Yeah.
We just
And
have to tap into the solution.
yeah. And actually, I think we know the solution. We know then each one of us can look at what's our part in that solution, this idea of doing what you most want to do. What's our part in the solution? And then we just have to look at what's keeping us from going down that route. And then what actions do we take once we know what's stopping us to take the energy, to touch that jaguar and take the energy to change our perceptions and thereby change reality.
Well, that's a key, and I want to point that out. You keep saying what action? You got to take action.
Yes.
The world of form. You got to take action.
Yeah.
Just dreaming around isn't going to make anything happen.
I took a group a number of years ago when we ended up meeting with the Dalai Lama. There were 33 of us in his living room. We spent an afternoon in his living room with him in Dharamsala, India. And that's another whole story of a miracle that happened. But in any case, one of the people, he opened it up to questions, and one of the people asked him, he said, so Your Holiness, what do you think of the idea that there's a person in the United States who's a writer, and he's asked everybody in the world to dream about peace at a certain time and a certain day. What do you think about that? And the Dalai Lama, without hesitation, said, well, praying for peace, dreaming of peace is a good thing, but if that's all you do, it's a waste of time and probably counterproductive because you walk away from the prayer and you say, well, I've done my job. They said, no, then you have to act for peace,
Mhm.
whatever it is. Yes, pray, dream. You might substitute the word pray with dream, but then you got to act. And this is
Yeah.
the Dalai Lama who manifests this in so many ways. So he meditates for many hours every day, and then he goes out and gives speeches and writes books. He's incredibly prolific over the years. And so there's a man who does both. He goes deep into the dream, and then he takes the actions.
Mm-hmm. So, how do people connect with you? How do they find your books? You take people on incredible journeys. How do they find out about those things? Tell us more about who you are and how people can be with you, John. Because I can tell you, I've been on many trips with John. It's an amazing, amazing experience. Just saying, just saying. Okay,
Thanks.
take it away, John.
Well, and I keep the trip small, as you know, to 15 people or less. So they're intimate and wonderful. And I've got a couple coming up into the Amazon and also to Guatemala and to the Mayan people. The best thing, just go to johnperkins.org. Remember, I'm an org, not a com. I'm an org, organic. And there's a lot of information there. And Gale, I think I would like to leave this conversation with the thought that I think we should all feel very, very blessed to be alive right now. Everybody who's on this program. Um, this is an incredible time in human history where we truly are reevaluating what it means to be human beings, being human on this planet. And we all have a role to play in that. And so this is an incredibly blessed time to be alive and be able to participate, to be able to listen to Pachamama, Mother Earth, Mother Universe, telling us that we must change. There's so many different ways. It's wonderful to be part of that experience, to be able to listen and then take actions.
And I think it's really important to look around and from a place of positivity, and you will see that there change is happening.
Yes.
You'll see evidence of that changes. You see evidence of people and that are aware and all the events that are about people saying no more. Let's connect to the earth, returning to indigenous wisdom.
Yeah.
It's out there if you look.
It's happening everywhere.
Everywhere around the world.
Yeah.
So we have 1 minute left. You did some last words. What last words do you want people to take away? What is if you had a sentence of wisdom, what would that be?
Enjoy the process. Realize that as a human, you're not just a body. You're a complete process. You're a process of mind, body, spirit, action, dreaming, actions, and so forth. And really enjoy every minute and do what you really want to do, but do it in a way that helps transform uh, what it means to be humans, being human on this planet, and recognize how incredibly fortunate you are to be alive at this time. And I want to say, we all got to, if you have a good meal, you got to wash the dishes. So there's things that we have to do as part of enjoying the process. Some things that aren't quite as enjoyable as others, but make those enjoyable too, to recognize that they're just a part of that process. But really focus on overall doing what you really, really want to do, what will bring you pleasure, and doing it in a way that helps others understand that we are a part of nature, not apart from nature.
Yeah. Joy. Live in joy.
Right.
Live in joy. Yeah, thank you. So this is Gale West, and I have John Perkins. Again, you can find him at johnperkins.org, O-R-G. He is not a com. And you can find all his books there, and also they're also on Amazon, right?
They're everywhere. And wherever you buy books, you can.
They're everywhere and in many different languages. And I recommend a trip with John. You will not be disappointed. You want to hear more stories, you'll hear many more stories. And his stories are really, really good. Thank you so much, John, for being
You're
with
welcome, Gale. Thank you. Thanks for all you do. Thank you for all you do. And just please keep doing it.
I try.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't try. I do.
You
There's
do.
a difference.
Yes.
And this is Gale West. We're done. Thank you for tuning in to Reality Reimagined with me, your host, Gale West. Listen and watch live every second and fourth Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com, where you will have the opportunity to expand your mind, elevate your spirit, and transform your world into something truly awesome. Reality Reimagined is an exciting out-of-the-box look at what's new, what's old, and what's emerging, exploring the questions, who are we and who are we becoming? For more information on hope and transformation for our new reality, visit me, Gale West, at successwithsoul.com.